Live from Bennett Hall in downtown Corner Brook, this is the Mi'kmaq Matters debate between the four candidates for Chief of Qalipu First Nation. I'm Glenn Wheeler. A warm welcome to you here in person and to those watching on Facebook. We honor this land that we're on tonight, land that the Mi'kmaq people call Elmistuqueg, unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Let me introduce our candidates. To my right, Brendan Mitchell. Next to Brendan, Geoff Sparkes, Peggy White, and on my left over here, Odelle Pike. A brief hand for our candidates. The seating and speaking order was determined by draw, which is how we determined who was sitting where. Let me explain the format for tonight's debate. We'll have opening statements, 3 minutes, and then we will move into the question period. I will pose a question to each of the candidates, beginning with Brendan and down to Odelle, and then we'll go back again, a question to Brendan and down to Odelle. So they will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then we'll have 5 minutes open discussion among all the candidates about that question. So 7 minutes per question, and then we will move into the audience portion where you, members of the audience, will have a chance to ask a question. 45 seconds for you to ask your question, and then the candidate to whom it's directed will have 2 minutes to answer, and then we'll have a 3-minute open discussion on those questions. And then closing statements, 2 minutes each. And candidates, don't worry, I'll recap in case you forgot all those numbers. I drafted the questions. None of the candidates or any other person has seen the questions. You'll all be hearing the questions for the first time. In fairness to the candidates, and to have the most informative event possible, we will abide by strict time limits. You will see here we have a timer. Byron Wheeler is our timekeeper, sitting next to Stan Osmond, our camera person. And when candidates, when there's 30 seconds left, you will see the green sign. 30 seconds. And then when your time is up, you will see the red stop. And so to be fair, please all respect the time limits, and I ask members of the audience who ask questions from the floor to abide by the same rules. And I apologize in advance if I interrupt to keep us on track. So with that, opening statements, starting with you, Brendan.
Okay.
3 minutes.
I prefer to stand, if that's okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's nice to see so many people here. And some of you have traveled here I see people from Stephenville Crossing and around. I encourage you to drive safe as you go home tonight and be careful with moose. I see a lot of family members here also. I have about a third of the room are related to me here, for sure. I'm really pleased to be here tonight to have an opportunity to speak with you all. I did an interview last week with CBC Television. It came on to be a radio interview eventually, and the first question I was asked was, why am I running for re-election at Qalipu First Nation as chief? And the honest truth is, I'm here because I care. I care about the future of Qalipu First Nation. I care about our people, our families. I care about our grandchildren, children, great-grandchildren, and future generations. This is why I'm running for chief again of Qalipu First Nation. The last 10 years went by very quickly. A very short life in the life of a First Nation. During that time, we built an extremely solid foundation for Qalipu and for our people. A foundation that has strength, integrity, durability, a foundation that can last. I'll be honest and straightforward with you all. I'm not interested in anybody coming and taking over this band as chief that's going to damage that foundation, break it, or make it leak. And this is why I'm running in this election. We've done a great job at Qalipu First Nation under my leadership. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't say it to you here tonight and say it to the people who are seeing this meeting this evening live streamed. Let me give you an example of how we're viewed. Indigenous Services Canada every year does a risk assessment of 634 First Nations in this country. And that risk assessment is based on a scale of 0 to 60, where 0 is good, when you don't want to be a high-risk situation. For the last 3 years in a row, Qalipu First Nation scored the best or lowest risk assessment in the eyes of Indigenous Services Canada in this country, with a score of 1. They look at our protocol, our governance, our financials, our reporting. It's about how well we're doing things. This First Nation has run very well. We have the respect of other First Nations across this country, from Vancouver Island all the way to St. John's. We have a respect of organizations like ours, a respect of government, municipal, provincial, and federal. I take what I do very seriously, and I try to represent our people and all of you to the best of my ability. Always respectful everywhere I go. Always in consideration of the future.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you very much.
Geoff Sparkes, 3 minutes.
That's a tough act to follow. Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Geoff Sparkes, and I'm asking for your support to be the Chief of Qalipu First Nation. Over the last 10 years, we have become fractured, in my opinion. We need a new way forward and a fresh start, and I'm going to be that fresh start for you, for our families, and try and bring our families back together as best we can. We need a credible leader at the table with the federal government, and I believe that's me. I've dealt in negotiations with the city of Corner Brook, as well as some of the toughest labor lawyers in the province. I think that's something that's absolutely necessary when we approach the federal government. Outside of that, there are many different issues that we need to improve upon. Some of those include housing, our non-insured health benefits. That really relies upon Ottawa. There are many issues in Ottawa, and I think we need a new voice there. We certainly need a new voice to bring our people back together. I've been on the campaign trail for months now, and a lot of things that I hear is that the chief is not visible in their communities. Well, I can tell you I'm going to be there. That's my plan. I've been to a lot of communities all my life, so it's nothing new to me and my family. And we really want to connect the people that we respect the best, and it's our neighbors. Stephenville Crossing, Burgeo, Cox's Cove, Lark Harbour, all points in between. Out in Central, we've got a lot of great people around. And I think that we can do a much better with a fresh start. And I really believe that I'm the person to do that. We need responsible leadership, we need accountability, and we need transparency. And we also need to be transparent and forthcoming in a lot of the different issues when it comes to the policies of our band. And right now, we're missing a lot of those. And I think it's time for a change, the proverbial change that people keep talking about over every election, but this is no different. Brendan's my first cousin, and thank you, Brendan. We've got a lot of cousins in the room. So this is not easy for us. We are trying to fight for the top job and lead our people and do the best we can. So I'm running against Brendan. I'm not trying to split votes. I want to do the best that I can for the people with responsible leadership. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Just for the people here in Bennett Hall, there are some chairs. If you don't mind being at the front and you want to sit comfortably, there are some chairs up here that are available. You will be able to see the candidates up close and personal. Peggy White, 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Peggy White, and I'm running for Qalipu Chief. So who is Peggy White? So for the last 20 years, I've been involved, 20, almost 30, I've been involved with the Mi'kmaq world. I have a degree in criminal justice. I have a law degree from Dalhousie Law School and a master's of law and Indigenous people law and policy from University of Arizona. I've worked with the United Nations Special Working Group for the Office of the High Commission on Human Rights regarding Indigenous people, and I've worked with KMK&O Negotiation Office for Mi'kmaq people and Mi'kmaq Legal Support Network for a decade now. So why I'm running for chief? Because there is cracks in our foundation. How can we go forward without our families? How can we go forward with our communities on life support? How can we build a nation if we don't have the connection which is inherent in all Indigenous communities, which is community? And the way that the band is functioning is not respecting the family and those connections. It's very important going forward that we recognize our communities and our people in it. It's very difficult for a huge corporation with 21,000 or so members to reach people on the ground. And it's only through the work in communities on the ground level that we can make sure that our people aren't hungry. We're dealing with addictions, which is an epidemic right now. We're dealing with housing. We're dealing with all the social dysfunctions that affect all Mi'kmaq communities across this country. We need to move forward in yesterday. It's imperative we don't have another 3 years to wait. Our communities are dying. Our age in most small Mi'kmaq communities is 60 and over. There's no children. We need sustainable development in all the communities so we can have communities. There's a 50 to 100 year plan. We don't have 50 years. Almost all the children have been removed from the band, and we're having to think really quickly on our feet about what we're planning going forward. I have the education, I have the passion, and I have the drive to make sure that our future going forward is strong and stable and in the best interest of all the Mi'kmaq people from Newfoundland.
Odelle Pike.
Good evening, everyone. As Glenn said, my name is Odelle Pike. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Mi'kmaq woman from St. George's. I've been involved in our communities for 30 years plus. Basically, for the last 20 years, more so. I feel that right now, we need to do a lot of work in our communities. Our communities, because I have been working on the ground in our communities, I know what the issues are. I know all of the things that are happening in our communities and what's needed to be fixed. Right now in our communities, we have a lot of issues to contend with. We have a lot of mental health issues, and I spoke about that quite frequently today at the Premier's meeting. We have a lot of our young people who are dying. Why? Because nobody cares. So we need to fix that. We really need to fix that. We also have a lot of other issues like housing. We have women who want to leave very hectic family life of abuse. There is no place for those people to go. Absolutely none. We know that most of our communities right now have a housing problem. How are we going to fix that? What do we need to make things better for our women? We have a lot of suicides in our communities. Since January, we have had 8 suicides in Western Newfoundland. We've had 2 overdoses in the last 2 weeks. Who is talking about that? How are we going to fix it? These are just some of the problems. And yes, we have other problems. You know, it's all well and good to say everything is hunky-dory, but everything isn't. So we have to come up with some really good planning to get that done. And I feel that I'm the right person to do that because I am presently in the communities, knowing the issues, knowing what needs to be done. And we also know that we need the support from everybody in our communities to fix the problems that we have right now. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go in the question and answer portion of our event. I am going to ask a question to each candidate. They will have 2 minutes to answer, and then we'll have 5 minutes open discussion where everyone can add in free and open exchange on that question and that topic. So, Brendan, my first question is to you. Qalipu has just turned 10 years old, and you have been chief for more than half of those 10 years. Just coming up to your, just finishing 6 years. There has been little or no progress on some key issues: enrollment, fishing access, urban reserve. In the 2018 debate, you promised a $20 million fish plant for Benoit's Cove and 200 new jobs from redfish, which there's no fish plant. Many feel it's time for a change, that we need a new chief. What do you say to those people?
Thank you, Glenn. Good questions. I'd like to clear the air on something, by the way. Brendan Mitchell has no ability to put a fish plant in Benoit's Cove. Bill Barry is trying to put a fish plant in Benoit's Cove, and our involvement in this will be to get a redfish license as an indigenous organization and create an opportunity for our people to have jobs. Well, let's clear the air. Brendan Mitchell wasn't putting a fish plant in Benoit's Cove. Bill Barry is trying to do that, by the way. Regarding enrollment, a very difficult topic. It's broken our families. I lost people in my family. My brother has 3 kids in Nova Scotia. My sister and her child up in British Columbia. They're all members of the FNI. I have 2, a brother and sister lawyers, supported by the FNI to go to pre-law programs. All out of the band. They're not in our band. So we all have these situations. Enrollment's not easy. We've been 12 years trying to straighten out enrollment. We're not there yet. And right now we have a government, a federal government, very uncooperative. Back in the spring and March, I got a letter from Minister Mark Miller saying we're pausing all conversation regarding FNI discussions to bring back those members as promised by Minister Carolyn Bennett in a letter provided to us in 2018 in November. I'm trying to get these people back to the table. It hasn't been easy. The FN has been supporting me. Provincial government's been supporting me. Atlantic Policy Congress has been supporting our initiatives. It hasn't been easy working with government. And yes, I am in writing to and trying to get a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau. These things are all tough situations that we face. We may be here another few years trying to sort it out too. But we will get to it. And we will eventually get our members back. But we have to push a lot harder. For me, I want to talk to Justin Trudeau. I know him. Get to his office and tell him we need to get back to the table. I spoke this to the Premier today. You need to support us in this province. You know Justin Trudeau. Get him back to the table. There are so many other things going on. I can't remember everything you asked me. You had a multi-question going on there.
That's okay, Brendan. We're just out of time now, but we'll have an exchange now of 5 minutes on that topic. So,
Okay.
Candidates, comments on the question and Brendan's
I believe the
answer?
question was about the promise of a investment from Bill Barry and 200 jobs. I was at the debate. I watched you say it. I watched you try and tell the people that that's what was going to happen. And a lot of questions coming from, especially the Benoit Cove areas, that it hasn't happened. It hasn't been put there. So I think that was the question in regards to what you were trying to say. It wasn't about enrollment. So anyway, that was a promise in your last campaign election.
Geoff, if I may, not a promise made by me about building a fish plant. I told you earlier, Bill Barry had committed to build a fish plant subject to getting a red fish license from Qalipu and processing done by people who own ships and boats. It was never a promise I made. I'm sorry. We do not have the resources to build a fish plant in Benoit Cove. It was something we were involved in.
Bill Barry, yes, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely
Well,
not.
your promise was of 200 jobs, a big
Not,
plant
if I
of
may,
$20 million.
again, Jeff, not my
Oh, yes,
promise.
it was in
My
your
hope
platform.
was to create 200
I can
jobs
bring it up
or
on
more.
my phone. I can bring it up on Facebook. It's all
You
over.
can do whatever you want.
That was your promise, and I was sat there and watching.
Oh,
On enrollment, we have been put in this position because the ink that was written and signed on the supplemental agreement was inked by you, Brendan. And when I was in a room in Halifax for the tender for the chief appeal master, I asked you at that meeting, is there a quota in 2016? And you said, oh, yes. And Steve May, the band's lawyer, said, don't ask those questions. You knew then in 2006, you said this is going to rip our families apart. You were quite aware of the damage that was going to be done on a family level, on a community level, and our respect and dignity as Mi'kmaq people across this country. You were aware then, and you still signed that agreement. A leader does not split families and cause the disrespect and illegitimacy that we face across the nation because of this entire enrollment fiasco. It's going to take a lot of work backpedaling and trying to force the government to sit down to the table, but it's possible. And we need the people of Qalipu to be inspired from the ground up and demand that we are taken seriously and that we are going to move this file forward. There's lots of different ways. I plan to vigorously defend the integrity of the Qalipu membership, not a piece of paper.
I've got a.
I really do. If I may, we can respond? Because I
Yes,
really do
let's-
want to respond to this.
Yes, but I want to make sure that Odelle has some seconds in this 148 remaining to get a word in.
Thank you. I feel that, going to Prime Minister Trudeau is not going to solve the problem. I think what we need to do is get back to community and find out what the community wants to do, because they're the ones that are supposed to be leading us into those decisions. So I feel that on the ground, community needs to be there in the forefront. We've already gone to Ottawa, to Justin Trudeau, and nothing has happened. So I think basically we need to go back into the communities and work as a whole, each member of Qalipu, to find out what we need to be doing, and not, like I said, going to Trudeau is not going to solve our problem.
If I may say, Odelle, going to Trudeau will drive the people in government to talk with us further about this issue and get back to the table and get working on this. To Peggy White, your comment about me signing a supplemental agreement, let me give you a bit of history. You don't know this file very well, and I do. Brendan Mitchell never signed a supplemental agreement, nor did I generate a supplemental agreement. It was brought to me as a counselor back in the day to be reviewed for passing purposes.
You still
If I
signed
may,
it.
let me finish, please. I stopped that supplemental agreement for quite a while. And I'll tell you this, I never ever supported the point system either that was applied to these people in a vote at our table. I was the only counselor who said I'm not supporting the point system. And you know, at the end of the day, how it went through, it wasn't to drive people out, it was to give 75,000 people a chance to get in because they had no chance any further.
The
Thank you.
agreement was so bad that 4 people resigned from council.
Okay, our time is up on that question, but no doubt we'll be back to enrollment later in the event. Our next question is for Geoff Sparkes. Geoff,
Yes.
of the 4 candidates, you probably have the least experience in Indigenous issues. As out of the firefighters union at City Hall, you've been involved in collective bargaining and that sort of thing. But Indigenous issues itself, you have not served on band council or in an Indigenous organization. Do you have the ability to be the chief of the second largest First Nation in Canada?
Absolutely. I was raised, despite what Lorraine might think, in an Indigenous family. And my mother was a pioneer in this movement. And I can tell you one thing, I'm absolutely ready to lead everybody. Not just some people or some people who support me or support Peggy or Brennan, everybody. And that's something that's happened here over the last 10 years especially, the divisions amongst people. And they're afraid to come to meetings because they don't want to be seen as supporting Geoff Sparkes or Peggy or Odelle or Brendan, even Brendan. They don't want to be caught up in the politics of it all. I was raised by Marie Mitchell Sparkes. She was the co-founder with Jack Mitchell of the Cornbrook Band Association. She was the president of the Bay of Islands Native Women's Association. I watched that woman devote her life to the Mi'kmaq people. I was raised with it. I watched her grow. I watched her protect her family. I watched her fight for her people. And today, my family, as well as everybody else's, have people that are not in this band that should be in the band. The Indigenous community, I've been to many events. Sometimes I don't remember because I'm a busy man. I have 2 children. I'm involved with my union activities. And people have come to me since I started going to little events here now. What events have you been to? Well, I go back through my Google Photos, and I see I've been to Blanchbrook. I've been to ceremonies over Margaret Park. I've been to different Indigenous activities, and I can produce the documents, pictures, but I'm not in the forefront. I'm not taking selfies at these events and broadcasting it all over Facebook. I come and I respect the drummers and the singers and watch, and I really enjoy it, and so do my children. So the fact that I haven't been involved in, well, I ran for the ward councillor, but Brendan supported Brian Dix. So, I mean, what chance did I have there?
Okay, so we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Byron, for open discussion. Candidates, any comment to questions of regarding Geoff's answer or qualifications in general for chief? What we need in a chief?
I think to be a chief of an organization this large, it's complicated. It takes strong organizational and leadership. It has fundamental understanding of where we need to be in 5 years, where we need to be in 10 years. We have an imperative to go forward and make sure that our communities are solid, or in 10 years, we're not going to have communities. Community is the base of all Indigenous organizations, and without it, there is no land, there is no fishing and hunting, there is no development. The communities will be gone, and without that connection, going forward is going to be impossible. There are so many things of what's wrong. People don't even realize we're not even true 6-1s or 6-2s. We're 6-1Bs, a subclass of First Nations in this country that hasn't been allowed to get out there. We're not given the information. We need leadership that is transparent, that tells us exactly where we stand within government on a regular basis. And the people from the communities have a voice within Qalipu, and their chiefs out there. Yes, there are chiefs in the communities. I'm one of them. In 18 months, we took our organization, resurrected it. We managed to receive $340,000 in grants in a very small time, built sustainable economic development with a convenience store, a gas bar, have proposals in for a 60-day addiction center for opiates.
Okay, why don't I turn to see if Odelle, Brendan, or Geoff have anything to say in our remaining 3 minutes.
Thank you. Glenn, if I may comment on this program and the setup here, you give us 5 minutes to talk, but we just lost a couple on one individual. Geoff, with respect to your comment, if I may say to you, you made a statement here that I supported Brian Dix. How do you know who I voted for in that election? Would you be surprised to know I voted for you?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Well, you shouldn't be.
Because you never called me, right?
But in any
I'll tell you
case-
what now.
Look,
We'll go back in time. We'll go back in 2013, okay?
you know, you're making
We're gonna
these statements,
tell
and
the
as
truth
if
here
I
now.
may make comment
Because
here
in
about Qalipu and
2013,
Okay,
Peggy.
one at a
asked me-
time.
You asked my brother Brian
Let's Jeff
to sign your
finish.
nomination papers. And when you went to his house and you asked him to be on a committee and you got elected, you left him off of any committees. You left him off of the committee. You made him the promise. Well, why would I believe that you were going to support me? You never called me. You
Jeff.
never said, hey, Jeff, good luck in the election.
You're my
Congratulations."
family, and that's why I
know
would
we're
support
family.
you. Thank you. Peggy, to you, you're talking about transparency. Do you realize that Qalipu First Nation is one of the most transparent Indigenous organizations in this country? We're transparent to a fault.
Then how come the membership doesn't know we're not even full 6-1s? We're 6-1Bs, which gives us less entitlement
Peggy,
than
I don't
any
know
other
why
First
every
Nation
individual
in this
member
country.
doesn't
Okay,
know
let
that.
Peggy finish. Let Peggy finish. Peggy?
The membership doesn't know. I asked a council member, a current council member right now, today, and they did not know there was such a thing as a 6-1B, a subset of First Nations in this country.
I can only say shame on that counselor. In terms of transparency, Peggy, we put a lot of information out there. We have a communications committee, a communications manager, and in fact, Odelle chairs the communications committee. So when I hear about where lack of transparency, I'm really surprised. I mean, we put everything out there. Who else in the country is live streaming council meetings? Do you know who? Nobody. Because everybody else doesn't want everybody else to know their business in a council meeting. We're extremely transparent. We always have been. You know, we have a staff spending their days trying to get information out there. MOUs on our website.
F&I meetings
Things
aren't
coming
public.
out every week.
F&I
Newsletters to 9,000 people.
F&I meetings
You don't
aren't
know what you're
public.
talking about sometimes, I think. You don't know a lot about Qalipu. I'm sorry to tell you that.
I know a lot about Qalipu. A lot. I'm a Qalipu member since the beginning, in 2011.
Odelle, we have 15 seconds. Anything you want to say to close off the...
I've just taken it all in, eh? But yes, I feel that as chief, I know what needs to be done, and I know that we need to talk more to our membership and go into communities and find out exactly what the people need.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Peggy, the next question is for you. You have called for something like direct action on the enrollment issue. People sending mass emails each and every morning to kind of clog up government offices as a sort of act of protest and force them to take action. You have also said that Qalipu/FNI has to put the smartest people at the table on the enrollment issue. Who are these people that you refer to, and what on enrollment can be done that has not been done in the face of the feds holding out until the courts tell them what they have to do?
So first of all, the power has always been with the people on the ground, right? And if every one of us got up every single morning, the members who have status and our brothers and sisters who have been left behind by what the decisions of the previous councils have agreed to. If we got up every morning and we sent a mass email every single day to Mark Miller, Carolyn Bennett, and Justin Trudeau, 10,000, 20,000 emails. Let's shut their servers down till they sit at the table. Myself personally, I don't think I know that even with this, as much legal qualifications that I have, that I need to go to Ottawa with the most competent Indigenous leaders in North America. People have been moving forward with really great law. The Supreme Court of Canada, it's on Indigenous sides, but we need to bring in experts. I'm not going to think that I'm the end and the answer, but I know that I want a constitutional law expert on one side, and I want a contracts expert in Indigenous law on the other side. It's important that we bring big guns to the table, because the government goes to the law schools every year and picks out the smartest beans off the bush. And we need some of those smart beans. It would be arrogant to think that I by myself can make those decisions, even with my qualifications. Qalipu has to move forward using the very best.
Thank you, Peggy. Candidates, 5 minutes.
Just to comment on the legal aspect of having people involved in our file. We have a number of lawyers that we work with on this file. Steve May is our current lawyer out of Cox and Palmer. He's been around a while.
He gets paid by the federal government.
We've worked with, what a terrible statement to make.
It's true.
We work with Robert James from JFK Law in Vancouver. We've been involved with Jerry Wetzel at Wetzel Law here in Newfoundland, the man who actually spearheaded a lot of the
And he's retired.
originating work that created the FNI in the early days, and then maybe even some of Qalipu First Nation. And we also work with Shane McDonald, a lawyer out of Mabuivac First Nation in Conn River. And yes, I've talked to other people across this country, including Ovid Mercury, who's still a practicing lawyer, about some of these issues. You know, big guns are great, and
They're necessity.
and we can certainly use them. We're in a situation right now, the government of Canada is at a place where you don't care about big guns because they don't want to talk to us at all. What we have to do right now is get government back to the table talking with us. And this is why we're putting pressure right now on government. Our members of parliament had to get involved. Our provincial government has to get involved and
I
give
got a
us a
question.
hand here. Go ahead, Jeff.
So are you suggesting, Peggy, that we hire more lawyers on top of the lawyers that we already have, or
Maybe
removing
we
those?
just, well,
removing the lawyers that
Jerry
were there?
Wetzel's retired
Yeah.
and has been for some time. You know, he was handling the case for Conn River back in 1983,
Yes, I'm very
84,
familiar with Jerry
85,
Wetzel.
and he was
My mother was
well up
involved
there.
with Jerry Wetzel back
Yeah,
in
I know
1980,
Jerry.
when they
And,
got their status and their reserve.
It's about forming a committee of lawyers to take on government. It's the way it's done across the country. It's the only way Indigenous people have won across the country, and it's the way we're going to have to too. Maybe we need some Indigenous lawyers who are experts in Indigenous law.
So removing the ones that are there now, and
Well,
All right.
obviously the ones that are there now aren't working.
okay.
They're not servicing the needs of the Mi'kmaq people of Newfoundland. And we need lawyers that know what they're doing, that have a successful track record in Indigenous law. And we need to bring them and have them working on our case to force the government to sit back down at the table.
Peggy, no disrespect to all those lawyers. David Wells is in the back of the room, the chief of Mi'kmaq First Nation Assembly of Newfoundland. He's been using one of the most notable and best law firms in the country in Indigenous law, Gowlings. We haven't got what we wanted yet through Gowlings, have we? No. It's not easy
It's not
getting
easy.
through this
Never said it
situation
was
with
easy.
government.
But we have to go to the table prepared. And I'm not going to be a beggar at our own table.
I'm just going to interject there. So I sort of disagree with your
That's fine.
approach. Not on with the lawyers thing, but the whole approach to inundate the government server systems and crash the government. I just don't think people are going to do it because
Yeah.
it's evident within the protests that we've been seeing. Greg James and certain people, you know, they protest and they try and get people out, and it's difficult. It really is. So to try and talk people into doing that, I don't think it's going to fracture any results.
I don't think it's about talking. I think it's about inspiring
Yes.
to bring the dignity and respect back to the Mi'kmaq people of Newfoundland.
Bill C-25.
And what's going on now and the harm.
There was a movement a while back, and I saw pictures of you up in Ottawa with certain individuals. And is that been dropped now, like trying to attack the Bill C-25 and ask for the removal of it and be struck down?
We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Bill C-25. When I go to Ottawa, we're talking about enrollment primarily in the situations that we face.
Oh, sorry, Brendan.
Yes.
The two gentlemen at the back.
Chit chat and sit down.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No
Continue.
sweat.
What we've been doing, we haven't been to Ottawa in a long time because of COVID. Yes, and we haven't been in our communities for a long time because of COVID. However, we go to Ottawa to try to get the Government of Canada to work with us to get through the enrollment process, to finish it. I told Mark Miller recently in a meeting, he's the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada right now. He may not be in that job when Prime Minister Trudeau sets up his new cabinet. The last face-to-face I had with him, if you call a video conference face-to-face, he seemed like he was that close to me. I told Minister Miller then he was avoiding us, and I told him avoidance is not a pathway to reconciliation. You need to think about that statement. The other thing, of course, I said to him is,
Brendan.
get out of the way, Minister Miller.
Thank
Qalipu
you.
First Nation can solve this in 6 to
Thank-
9 months. We
thank
don't
you.
need government in our way. We know who our people are.
Thank you. Our next question is to Odelle Pike. Odelle, you have decades of experience as a volunteer in various Indigenous organizations in Newfoundland. You recently stepped down, I think, as chair of the board of directors of People of the Dawn,
I have.
Indigenous Friendship Center. You're still involved with NON, the Newfoundland Aboriginal Women's Network, and you said in your interview with Greg James that you spend some days 10 hours a day on some NON work. So will you be, if elected chief, will you be a full-time chief working out of the office in Corner Brook? And will you be stepping down from your other volunteer activities to make that possible?
Okay, so yes, I work with NON. Well, I don't work, I volunteer. And yes, there are lots of days, it's 10, 14 hours a day. But the work I do with NON is no different than the work that needs to be done with Qalipu. Okay? It's basically the same. The work that I do with NON in our communities is the work that we should be doing as chief of Qalipu. Going in the communities, finding out what the issues are, trying to correct the issues. Will I be in Corner Brook? No. If I do become chief, my office will be in Stephenville. And I will still be, because I'm in different communities, I'm not only in Stephenville. My community work goes all across the island because we have Indigenous women's groups all across the island that I work with. So for me to say that I'm going to be just stuck in the office, no, I'm not. I'll be on the ground working.
Okay, other candidates, any comments about Odelle's answer or anything else relevant to that issue?
I think it's important that instead of sending people out to the communities, you can't learn what a community needs unless you live in that community. Those community people and chiefs need to come to the table and tell us what they need. It's no good for a 2-hour visit to the community. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you how many seniors, how many addicts, how many homeless people, all of those. You can fill out surveys all day. It doesn't tell you what the community needs. That community needs to have a voice at the table. There's lots of great bands out there with very strong leadership. They're not supported by Qalipu in almost any way. They do all the work on the ground day and night with no recognition. Qalipu does not recognize the communities or the chiefs, and that has to end. The communities are what makes up Qalipu, and those communities are also the people, those people up on the mainland. They're not people. That's our family members, our brothers, our sisters, our nephews, cousins, all of it. We need to have the voice of the communities in Qalipu.
If I may comment on that, we have elected councillors. Some people in this room tonight are running for ward council. I can see a few of them here. The role of the ward councillor is to speak on behalf of the communities within their ward and bring that back to the council. That's a principal responsibility of a ward councillor. I don't know if it's the
Some of those
responsibility
wards
of
are
the
the
chief of
size-
Qalipu First Nation, if I may, to live in your community to find out how people are doing. That's not what we need to do. It's the councillors that have to be involved. With respect to these other bands you refer to, there's bands springing up everywhere. Your band was incorporated in March of 2020. I think you're the chief, CEO, and the band manager. Is that correct? You're a brand new band. Ever come to Corner Brook, ever? For example?
Oh, we've been waiting to come to Corner Brook and see you and council for 18 months. And you can say it's because of COVID,
I'm yet to
but
see
we
you
have
come,
these many
I'm yet
people
to see
here
you come to
tonight.
Qalipu and try to talk with me. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, you're all one way here. It's about Qalipu is doing nothing. You know very little about what
I'm trying to
Qalipu
stop
is
the
doing,
bus here.
obviously.
Who are
Listen,
you
we-
saying
there
you're all
was-
one way? I don't like that comment. You are all one way?
All
Like you're
one
talking
way
about-
in terms
who
of
are you
the
talking about?
comments
When you
I'm
say you were
hearing
all one
tonight
way,
about what
you,
Qalipu
the audience,
is,
or you?
if I may, about what
It's kind of
Qalipu isn't
accusatory
doing.
tone there.
Qalipu is doing a lot.
Qalipu
of
got
good work.
$4.5 million for COVID relief. Our band, we had to bring Keith Goulding out and beg, and there was $75,000. And when Keith left, he said, "Okay, I'll divide it up amongst like 9 or 10 different communities." We had to apply. We got $5,400 out of $4.5 million. We did not get a mask. We did not get a bottle of sanitizer, nothing. And then the people in our communities are seniors who do not have internet, who do not have computers. They are completely left out of the situation because they can't apply for the cards. They can't apply for anything because they're systematically, through the communications, cut off. It's the little bands that maybe you call springing up. We've been out there forever.
I will.
But they didn't have the expertise.
Can I jump in?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It's just some of the thoughts that I've experienced going through the communities over the course of the summer. One of the things that has been really raised to me is the local bands are starting to rejuvenate now. The ones that were sort of suggested that they dissolve when Qalipu was formed. I don't think it's the fault of one individual or Brendan Mitchell or Brendan Jeppard. It's just the nature of the Qalipu and how it's became. It's became sort of a corporate structure, followed by the corporations.
In the 2018 debate I
Yes.
was watching, and you said, Brendan, that the government didn't want the bands, didn't want those little community bands. But it's those little community bands that put out food hampers, that fill out people's paperwork, that make sure that if someone needs something, that they're there to make sure that the 98-year-old Mi'kmaq woman has enough to eat. Those little bands are the ground of a Mi'kmaq community.
I just wanted to say.
Hold on a
before I
second.
finish-
Now, I'm not getting a chance to speak.
Odelle,
Sorry.
you have the
So
floor.
I think it's my turn now. Back years ago when Mr. Shepherd was forming the band, I was instrumental in fighting that the band should remain because I could see the need of the bands and the purpose of what would happen if the bands were eliminated. That's why you see the bands coming back for that same reason, is because communities need that on-the-ground support.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Odelle. Okay, so that's round one of our questions. So a second question for Brendan. Brendan, one of the frustrations about the enrollment process is the lack of information that we members and people seeking a membership get about what's going on, in particular with the implementation committee, which meets regularly, but we get not very much in the way of what happens at those meetings. So if you're re-elected chief, will you undertake to provide more transparency on those meetings? In particular, will you provide a summary of each meeting of the implementation committee, including matters discussed and decisions taken?
Glenn, that would be a decision of actually our F&I group and, yes, in conjunction with the implementation committee. Remember, we're involved in a discussion and a negotiation. I spent my lifetime working at Corner of Pulp and Paper. For example, when we were involved in negotiations, do you think the parties told everybody what they were talking about all the way along? I'm all for letting people know what we're trying to accomplish with respect to enrollment. Information regarding the military side, the RCMP, bringing back our veterans, where we're headed with the FNI. Absolutely, Glenn, we have to be telling people about that. But let's be clear. Everybody involved in a negotiation, you're a labor lawyer, I believe?
I am.
Do you tell everybody that everything you're negotiating as a labor lawyer to every person who potentially could be involved at the lowest level of that business? I doubt very much if you do. We can certainly try to tell people what we can, and we do. We've been talking about the veteran situation for a while right now, and yes, we tell people where we are. We're talking about the FNI, and we have to ratify those agreements when they come with a membership of Qalipu First Nation. And that's the way it all works. I heard a comment recently that came out from one of our candidates making a suggestion that there was a document, the agreement was on my desk for 2 weeks, and nothing was moving. I spoke to the MP who allegedly made that comment to somebody to find out that wasn't stated at all. So, you know, in terms of where we're going, we can't tell everybody everything all the time. We're doing our best to try to get the enrollment file straightened away. We all know it's a struggle. We've been 12 years at it now. It may take another 4 or 5 to get this fixed up. This is where this file is. Telling everybody everything, every step of the way, every day, is not even practical in the world we're in, trying to deal with government and negotiate a deal for our people. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Brendan. Now we have 5 minutes for discussion. Candidates?
Well, I'm just looking at some of your campaign platforms here. Accessibility. I'm committed to being accessible to members by working full-time at the Qalipu office. My door will be open to our people. Councillors and staff will be expected to be accessible to members. Do you think that's happening now?
Absolutely it's happening. My door's open every day. People come in and knock on the door downstairs.
Just a second now. Please, let Chief finish.
They come and ask to see me. I don't even know these people, wanting to talk about their individual files. I bring them up in my office and offer them coffee and do all that. Of course, I work every day. I very seldom ever take vacation. You know, there's a lot you people don't know about me. You know? Yeah. When I came into this job, let me tell you something about Brendan Mitchell. It was never about me. When I ran for chief, it was trying to fix a mess of enrollment that happened to our people. When I became chief of Qalipu First Nation, I had a salary, the same salary that the former chief had. I froze that salary for 6 years. Not a raise, not even the 2% cost of living that all of our staff get. If I'm re-elected chief, I'll freeze it for another 3 years. This is what I do. I'm entitled also to meeting money, believe it or not. I call it pyramiding. Money with the IC committee. Money for being vice chair of MAMCA. Money for other things. I don't take that money. I never had. Okay. If I get an opportunity...
Is there a council that makes any of these decisions with you, or is it just...
About what?
About the money.
My decision.
Is your decision about the money?
Absolutely. About my money, my decision, of course.
Your money?
Why would a councillor be involved in that?
Let's see if Odelle or Peggy have anything to say about the implementation committee and information there.
I have a question. So you have the same council in chief who's on Qalipu is also the same council in chief president of FNI. The FNI only has one file. One, enrollment and finalizing the founders list. There's council members who have stated publicly in the last little while that they don't know what's going on. So if you're sitting with on the FNI council, which meets regularly, and if you don't have an idea what's going on in that file, there's a problem. Where's accountability? How can you sit, what are you going to those meetings for if you don't know what's happening on the only file? Those meetings are secret or not allowed to be televised. And where's the transparency in that?
Odelle, you've been on council. What can you tell us about what councillors know about implementation committee?
I am on council as ward councillor for Stephenville. I'm not on the implementation committee. We all have our own portfolios.
No, but I'm talking about FNI. You sit on the council for FNI?
I do.
And they have one file.
That's right. Well,
one file. And you don't know what's going on in there. Then that's a problem. How could a council member
Odelle,
who
did you
sits
just state that you don't know what's going on in that file?
no, I didn't.
Let's not
I
let
didn't.
Peggy put
What
words in our
what I
mouths here.
said
I'm not putting
was,
words. I watched you say it online.
I said what I said online was I am not on the implementation committee. So with the committees that we have, what we do as councillors, if we're responsible for a portfolio, we look after that portfolio. My portfolios are education and communication. The implementation committee has 4 councillors. Is it 4? There's the chief, the vice chief, the 2 vice chiefs, Frank Scared, and the band manager, plus the lawyer. We don't sit in on those meetings.
No,
How many
but
of those
if you
people were
have,
members of the FNI?
Pardon?
How many of those people were original members of the FNI?
I have no idea.
but if you
Frank?
have an implementation committee in Qalipu,
Yes?
but you also have FNI with that one file for enrollment,
All of the members of council are not on the implementation committee.
but the implementation committee is a part of Qalipu. FNI is a separate entity who is fighting against the membership.
They're not fighting against the membership.
No.
Oh,
The implementation
okay.
committee, if I may,
We are
is not Qalipu. It
Ti-
represents the Federation of Newfoundland Indians.
Time is up on this question. We will perhaps we'll no doubt we'll be back to enrollment before the evening is over. But we have a question now for Geoff Sparkes. Geoff, the question is this: there have been some concerns about delays in this Qalipu election process, and meanwhile we see that some members of Qalipu have complained about jobs being filled without them being posted as required by the Qalipu policies. And we also have reports about morale problems among Qalipu staff. Do you have confidence in the Qalipu senior staff, or do you think there need to be changes there?
Well, from my knowledge and my understanding of the people that I've spoken to, the hiring processes are handled by managers. It's not handled by chief and council. However, I have heard that there is a very toxic work environment created there, and it's something that I would like to change and like to work upon with the council and as chief. The issues of what was the other question there? The first one was,
Jobs being filled without being posted?
so I'm not aware of that internal issues because I've never applied for a job with Qalipu. I have had a career now with the Cornwall Fire Department since 2007, so I haven't actively been seeking any employment there. I have spoken to individuals who have applied for jobs and have done interviews there, and I guess the way that it was handled and the way things were, how they were treated has certainly been an issue to them. So it raises concern for me before going into the chief's position. It's something that certainly has to be looked at amongst the chief and council. Because if the management, the senior staff, are not conforming to the policies that are set out by the council, then they need to be held accountable as well.
Candidates.
If I may, Glenn, I mean, I sit here listening to these generalizations with no commentary regarding actual proof. It's easy to say, I heard you say our work environment is toxic. My goodness.
Well,
that's not what I hear from our employees.
No, because
They're
they're
very
intimidated
happy.
by it. Just a second now. This is a debate between us, so we hear you. We hear
Yeah,
you.
guys, you know, people say these types of things, and I don't know where your basis is or background.
Well, I've spoken
you
to a
make
lot of
these
individuals.
Who have you spoken to?
They
Who?
want to be confidential, and I've given that confidence.
Man, oh man.
Right?
You guys
It
are
doesn't-
unbelievable.
You know, if you're hearing those things, and I'm hearing those things out in the public, then we have big issues.
And we hire people based on our policy. We have an internal policy and an external policy. All jobs that have to be posted outside external are posted external. Then we have a competition for these jobs. We interview people. We get a long list to a short list. And it's the senior staff then who identify these people and hire them to do work for us.
Yes.
And that's the way it is in a lot of companies, and we're no different. We're strong on governance, and we stand by our policies.
With so much
especially on
personal
hiring.
information at open, like all of our files. And I know people, I know in particular one person who is working at that office right now that wasn't vetted because I didn't receive a phone call and the last employer did not receive a phone call to find out if that employment. So you're not vetting. There has been, not you personally, I'm sure, but under your leadership, employees are getting in there that aren't vetted and all our personal information is there. So I think it's necessary that the policies and procedures need to be adhered to.
We do adhere to our policies and procedures. I'm actually saddened tonight to come here and listen to the statements that are being made with no proof, nothing.
I've got lots of-
Are
only
you
I've got
saying
lots
that
of
I'm saying something
conjecture
that's not true?
I'm
and,
not a
and
fool.
comments made
I'm not a fool.
so general and so
It's
easy
not
out of your
general.
mouths. I'm flabbergasted, actually.
Yes.
Flabbergasted.
Odelle,
I've spoken to enough people. to know
let's
what's
give
going on.
Odelle a chance.
Thank you. It's all I can say is that council are not the people who hire the employees. Okay? That is left up to the management people at Qalipu. Council's job is to do procedures and policies. The hiring is left up. If there's a job posted, council doesn't get involved in that. We have no say in those
No.
matters.
And it would be the same thing at the city of Corner Brook.
Exactly.
You know, I applied for my job, and they have assistant deputy chiefs at the fire department that's hired by the senior management, the director of protective services. That's their job in HR.
Yep.
And that's normal in every organization, same with mill or probably non, like you.
At the end of the day,
Yes.
chief and council are elected by you people. And we're the ones who are held responsible for each and every decision that's made. So it's if things are going by unseen, that's on chief and council. We're elected to make sure that the resources, the people, and everything is all handled in the best intention for the people that make up Qalipu.
And they are being handled professionally and based on our protocol, our HR policy. This is what guides us. It's our HR policy. We don't work on a whim. We have a certain procedure to follow at Qalipu First Nation when we're hiring people. And that's the way of the world here. But again, I'll go back to some of these statements I'm hearing. I'm actually in shock that people can come
you ever-
here
Well, as
and
the
make these
Have you
leader-
ever breached
generalizations.
any confidentiality? Have you ever breached somebody's confidentiality that's worked within Qalipu?
Have I breached
Have
anybody's
you ever, their
confidentiality?
confidentiality, have you ever done any of those things?
I'd have to think about that one, Jeff.
Think
Absolutely.
hard. Think hard.
Okay. Just a question.
Okay, we'll go on to our next question is for Peggy White. Peggy, you've spoken during the campaign about the importance of community bands such as your own, the Three Rivers Mi'kmaq Band, and the role they play in the lives of Mi'kmaq people. And you say that such bands should be financially supported by Qalipu. But community bands have status and non-status people in them. Doesn't Qalipu have a legal duty to use its financial resources to the benefit of its members?
I think it's an ethical. How can we possibly say one child can receive benefit and the sibling can't? Although there's limited resources, there's times when people are getting benefits of the band and they can afford not to have those benefits, while there's people who are receiving who don't get benefits who aren't. You know, it's this whole enrollment process, and this is what illegitimizes what's going on here. Two children treated differently, same family. That can't happen. So how can we leave out our children who, through no fault of their own, except for bad leadership and bad government decisions? Because remember, at the end of the day, the government is not acting with honor of the crown and treating us with any respect. So we need to look after our children and our elders, and that's not happening. There's no rhyme or reason when someone who has extended amount of resources is getting benefits when people who are barely being able to feed themselves aren't getting any. It's people with computers. They're able to get those resources, but majority of our seniors live on fixed income and they're not being helped. And it's only through what happens on the ground in these little tiny communities who are actually helping people. And so we need to support them. There's ways with the new funding agreement, there's a lot more flexibility. We have to reinvigorize our bands. They need to come into the table. They need to be supported.
Thank you, Peggy. Candidates, discussion.
I feel that I'm going to speak first this time because I never get a chance to butt in there. You know, that's all well and good, Peggy, but the fact of the matter is that the monies that is given to Qalipu is for members only, right? So that being said, there's a lot of other opportunities, like for education, and that we do have funding for non-status people. It's very difficult to say that we are going, it's not realistic to say that we're going to, within our 67 communities, to be able to support all what you're saying. Because the matter...
I'm not saying support at all. I'm saying give a hand to people who need it. There are millionaires now whose children are getting educational funding, and people who don't have those resources who aren't. And because of the whole enrollment process, if we funded the bands on the ground, even a small bit, they are able to go out then and go after resources within government, go after resources within the province and regionally, able to make proposals for different things and receive that money. If we empower our communities and send out the experts to teach how to write proposals, to teach how to go out and get the grants and get those things the same way I do for my community, then that community has a chance to grow, bring in jobs, bring in services, bring in all these things. It's Qalipu's obligation to support the communities that gave Qalipu its foundation. And if you don't have that foundation in the communities, it will fall over. And we need to get back to the basics and support the communities that do all the work and who know who our children and our seniors are.
So what you're saying is we need that in 67 different communities.
No, we don't. We don't need it in 67 communities. Even in my area, my band makes up 10 communities, right? Flat Bay takes care of St. Teresa. Stephenville takes care of the crossing. Port-à-Port all the way up to Benoit's, the Cape. Every community is multiple communities. Lorraine Lavers up in, Mildred Lavers up in the Northern Peninsula. 49 communities she looks after. with no help. With no help. These chiefs don't even receive a pack of paper or a pen, and they work day and night for their people. And I think that has to change. Qalipu has the resources and the expertise to go out and help these communities. Stephenville used to have such a strong band, and now they have an office that's closed, and they have a little bit of a thing, but they need help. They need the expertise sent out from Qalipu and teach the people in the community so they can help themselves and build their communities and re-establish, so that in 10 years, 15 years, when all the seniors, God love, could be possibly gone, those communities are still strong, because our kids can stay home and leave their education and their skills home, or they can move home with their children, because our communities have no children anymore, and we need to rebuild.
Geoff and Brendan.
Odelle finish what she started to say, please. I would appreciate to hear what Odelle.
Well, I thought she was finished, and Geoff and Brendan haven't heard any.
Point out something in regards to the Jordan's principle. That's a huge benefit to the on-reserve and off-reserve children, and it's supposed to ensure that our children are taken care of. We have the government who continuously fights them in court. And I've seen it in labor issues as well, like with the fire department and labor negotiations, where towns will continuously take it to court and they will continuously appeal. Like, the government of Canada is appealing every decision that gets made. The tribunal that allowed the Jordan's principle, the tribunal that awarded the Jordan's principle is being squashed by the federal government.
Last word to you, Brendan, on this.
Jordan's principle
Thank
is
you.
solid.
Brendan
It's
hasn't
solid.
said anything
Sorry.
on this, so let's give
Yeah,
him
but
a
the
very much.
government keeps putting it in court.
Brendan.
They keep
Thank
appealing
you very
the
much.
decision.
We're probably
Jordan's
going to go
principle.
beyond the 11 seconds here. Thank you for giving me a chance to say something here. Hello First Nation doesn't have a responsibility right now or a mandate to support every band that could spring up in any community, and they're coming up everywhere.
Please, some
Hello
Brendan.
First Nation manages programs. We provide services to our members and health benefits. You know how much? $12 million every year. $12 million we give to our people. Education,
Okay,
$8 million.
Okay,
These are the programs we
thanks,
manage.
Brendan.
We don't have these funds to give your band and every band that
Thank
can
you.
spring up.
Thank you, Brendan.
Sorry.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, we have one more question before we get to questions from the audience, and that question is to Odelle. And Odelle, the question is this: 4 positions in Qalipu have been decided by acclamation. Ward councillor for Gander Bay, Glenwood, and Corner Brook wards, all acclamation, and central vice chief also by acclamation. Other than for chief, no other race has more than 2 candidates. Do you believe that Qalipu has a member engagement problem? And if so, what would you do to deal with it?
Okay. It's very difficult to get engagement in communities. You know, lots of times we set up engagement sessions and you probably have 2 or 3 people to come forth. People are, I don't know, we try to find out, why aren't people showing up? You know, I know that most of the candidates who are going out in community right now are seeing very low numbers of people.
Yep.
So what is the problem? We have to find out what the problem is. Because right now, nobody's showing up to anything. And that's sad. I mean, you know, even in Grand Falls, there wasn't one candidate who ran in the election. Why is that? I don't have the answer, but I do know that we need to find out why. Is it because we're not doing enough to promote? Is it because people don't care? You know, lots of people say because they got their card, they don't care. I know that when a lot of our people had lost their cards, and I went around to communities to help them retain their cards back, the whole place was filled. So that was a reason. They had a good reason for coming out. People don't care. People just don't care anymore. So we need to find out why is that.
Candidates?
Well, if I may, I'll offer you another solution, Odelle and everybody. Nobody ran for Central Vice Chief. It was acclaimed. You mentioned that. We also had a situation whereby Gander Bay was acclaimed, Glenwood was acclaimed, Corner Brook was acclaimed. This was suggested to me. Do you think it's possible that people are satisfied with what they're getting and what Qalipu is doing? Because if they weren't, as Odelle said, the hall would be filled with people fed up and disappointed with enrollment. Maybe it's a case that people are saying, things are going okay. Why would I get involved? But when people are upset, when people are unhappy and dissatisfied, that's when they throw their names forward in these elections. Just food for thought. That was suggested to me recently.
I don't think that's really the case. I think the pandemic right now has a lot to do with the low turnout in all of the communities, especially in Central. But there is, things that are happening within the communities that we need to find out. So, yes, if there is a problem, like the enrollment, people losing their cards, you get people. But I don't necessarily think that people are not coming out because we're doing a good job. I really think that there is other reasons for that. And right now, I know for a fact that the pandemic is that reason.
Absolutely.
Because people don't want to get the...
Geoff, Peggy, on this point?
Well, being out into the communities, one of the things that they do come up with is I know some new bands are starting to form in Terry Green and down Ben Musgrove, and Peggy yourself out in Three Rivers. Those bands are starting to come back. It's a fine line to try and give all the funding and give everything to the local bands because Qalipu is supposed to be membership based. So it's very conflicting for us because our families that are left out and the families that are in, how do we just turn around and say, well, we can't give money because half of the people in Three Rivers, I'm just using an example, are not status Indians with Qalipu First Nation. But I think supporting the local bands, having those chiefs involved, and supporting them just by being in the community and going down to a walk or to an engagement or to any types of those sessions will try and reinvigorate those bands because Qalipu really it's a difficult time if you're in Flat Bay and you got Burgeo community with you. It's difficult to be traveling back and forth all the time and as a ward councillor. So we do have to focus on the local communities too.
Local communities do everything. When I make a call for volunteers, I get 25 people show up immediately. They help make sure the food baskets get out. When we gave away all the food last fall, when we need to help someone with a roof, whatever we're doing, because it's our neighbors and our family, we have a much higher turnout because they actually feel like they're part of something. It's very difficult to feel like you're part of a corporation. And without that small community where we belong with our neighbors, it's much easier to act like a community and get the support. It's very difficult because some of our communities are hundreds of miles away from Corner Brook's main office. You're not able to, as an organization, check on all the people in your community. So we, in fact, to really have that sense of engagement, you have to be a part of it. And you can't have that with a corporation of Qalipu. So when you break it down into small groups, it actually works much better. And it's not that Qalipu would have to give all the resources, but some of the outreach and the support needs to go directly out to the communities so they can do what they do best, which is take care of the people in their community.
One of the reasons, I may, why some of these bands are springing up has not a lot to do with what we're hearing tonight. It has to do with people trying to reconnect with their culture. And these bands and organizations are doing a fantastic job on the ground to bring our people in contact with their culture. So I say hats off to all the bands that are out there in these communities. It's the community members that do most of the work. I can name half a dozen. I see people right here in this room right now. I look at Sherry Dean, very active on the ground in support of Indigenous initiatives. They came and sang for us this morning for the Premier. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so now it's time for questions from you, members of the audience. There is a microphone there, a cordless microphone, which you can speak into, and you can speak into about 6 inches away from the microphone. That will give good sound for us. So the rule here is no more than 45 seconds to ask the question. Direct it to a candidate. That candidate has 2 minutes to answer, and then we'll have 3 minutes for discussion. So, no takers, I see. Please say your name for the people at home.
Hayward Young. Every election time we talk about transparency, and I like what transparency for me is knowing what issues are supported by ward councillors, disclosure of all councillors' businesses involvement, minutes should be verbatim, no abstaining unless in conflict, an intense conflict of interest document, constitution and bylaws that protect the people and not the board, and don't restrict the release of information to members who actually gets the consulting fees, either person's name or companies.
What's your question?
The question is, we're getting it here again tonight, we're going to see it, but we haven't seen it to date. So are you people going to support these things I just mentioned?
Why don't we go very briefly around, starting with you, Odelle?
Well, I can't remember all the things you said, Hayward, but I know that, I'm a firm believer in transparency, as everybody who works with me knows, and also all of the community work that I do. So, yes, I agree to what's there from what I can remember.
Peggy.
It's very important for the trust and the respect that's needed in the leadership. And those things are very, very, very important. How can you go forward if the people who make up this band don't really feel that they're prioritized and the information that they're seeking isn't available? There's a lot of hurt for members who didn't make it through the last call, and that's the only thing, because it's cultural genocide. And we need to support those people, and they need to know exactly what's going on, because it's a fundamental right and benefits. Well, I mean, especially when you're talking about veterans and RCMP, those are benefits that they probably need with mental health, with pharmaceuticals, with all the rest of the things that harmed people need. We need to make sure they have as much information as possible, just to make them feel better.
Yeah, Byron, we can give an extra minute because there was. We should have started from 2, so it'll be. We have a minute 30 left. So Geoff and then Brandon.
Okay, sorry. I thought we were running out of time.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say yes. Transparency has been a big part of my campaign, stemming from financial disclosure to campaign contributions. I'm not accusing anybody. I know people have asked me, are you accusing people? No, but we certainly do need to concentrate on the transparency in regards to campaign contributions, among other things within the band, and certainly expenses within the band, absolutely.
Brendan.
Okay. Hayward, to you first of all, thank you for your questions, your comments. Everything you mentioned in that list, by the way, Qalipu First Nation is doing very well today. Honestly, we are. We are transparent. We do provide all the pieces of information that you'll have in a timely basis, whether it's meeting minutes of our meetings. We post so much. Even MOUs that we have with companies that are Yeah, in their view, it's pretty private. We post them too, and we put all that stuff out there. Jeff, to you, I don't know where you're going with the contribution to the campaign. I think you were actually
It's pretty simple.
soliciting money from
Self-explanatory.
people.
Whoever donates to your campaign, you disclose it.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward. I thought it was.
Okay. On that note, we'll go to the next question. Please say your name, and you have 45 seconds to ask your question.
I'm Lorraine Stone from the Corner Brook area. I was all for all four of ye. I can go to Grand Falls and go into a Mi'kmaq building. I can go to Steve Mill Crossing. I can go to Steve Mill. But guess what? I can't near Corner Brook, and I'm not the only one. Odelle, you find them stairs hard. So my question to the four of ye, what are you going to do about disability for us and our seniors? And how long is it going to take?
I can answer that one, Lorraine. I'll start off to answer it because I think that, we really need to have our buildings accessible. And I've already looked at means of ways of doing that within the building that you're talking about, especially to access the room. And I think I have a very easy solution.
What's that, Odelle? Tell us.
What it is when you come into the building, to the left, there's a space there. And I think an elevator could go there very easily up to the next floor. And I don't think it would take a lot of money to do it.
Elevator or what the church has got, you sit on this
Yes.
thing and it brings you up here.
Right up.
All the church has got.
Absolutely.
Peggy.
I think by this day and age, every building should be accessible. It's unbelievable that a building wouldn't have to meet disability codes.
Yeah, because
And,
they're grandfathered in.
But you know what?
They'd still need to, especially with most of the population of this band over, 55, 60 years old. It's a real impediment.
There's lots of buildings that are not accessible. I mean, the courthouse in Stephenville is not accessible. I had to support somebody and I had to literally, with my walker when I had my hips done, go up those 2 flights of stairs to help to support a woman who was in court. So there's lots of buildings that are not, even government buildings that are not accessible. But I think for us at Qalipu, that building can be accessible very easily.
Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a council meeting in 2019, and so I know Lorraine, and I've seen her mobility issues. And at the time, I had a torn Achilles tendon, so I was in a boot. But I'm, a big strapping man, and I can hop up. Others don't have that ability. I did read the post, I think, on Facebook by Laura White in regards to the Governor General coming to town and having the celebrations upstairs, or the meet and greet, or whatever it was, and leaving the person outside in the wheelchair. That's not acceptable. I think we can all agree on that, and we need to make those buildings accessible for all. And certainly, at that time, maybe they should have had it in a different location. That would have been accessible for everybody.
Brendan.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I have to agree with Lorraine totally. That building at the Majestic up here is totally ill-suited for what our needs. Maybe as a building never ever should have been purchased. I did speak to the Development Corporation recently and say, listen, that building is not working for us. You have to consider maybe getting rid of it and get us a new building. Get us a better building. Something on the ground, something gives us a community room, maybe something gives us a council chambers. We own a lot of value in that Majestic building right now. And maybe there's an opportunity to buy something better suited for people that have handicaps. And we talked about that. And yes, we've looked at the elevator situation and even had people come in to try to figure out physically where we could put it.
Thank you.
Where we punch holes in the walls, and we're looking at that. But we need a new building.
Thank you.
That building is no good for us.
Thank you, Brendan. Next question, please say your name, and you have 45 seconds to ask a question.
My name is Nicole Wheeler, and I'm going to ask about something that's very near and dear to my heart as a special needs mom. So Jordan's Principle was referenced here tonight. So just for people who don't know, Jordan's Principle is a child's first needs-based program for First Nations children. Can you tell me what your plan is to meet the needs of special needs children within our communities so they can obtain services, remain within their natural support system, and provide inclusivity in our community. Because working with Can River does not work.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I'll start here. I know a bit about Jordan's principle. Mitch Blanchard is our health director. He's been working with Con River to try to find support services for our members. Sadly, though, when the request came in or was made to get involved in Jordan Principle, we were trying to hire the person ourselves as a non-reserve. The job went to Con River, but we were the ones who started the conversation about Jordan's Principle and having somebody working with us to take care of it. Because we are a non-reserve, it went to Con River. We have been working with Rocky John and Con River to try to get people's needs met. It's not perfect. There are monies available for Jordan's Principle, and unfortunately right now for the whole province, Jordan's Principle is handled for Indigenous people out of Con River. But I support what you're saying. We have to be looking at the needs of our young people particularly, and we have been helping out in many cases.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Jordan's Principles for all Indigenous children, its forms, it's not based on if you live in a reserve, or First Nation, it's based on wherever you live. It's an application that's sent into Atlantic Canada's Indigenous headquarters. Every community. Jordan's Principle has been around for some time, and it's to make sure that any Indigenous child, wherever they live, has accessible abilities to access those funds. And you don't need a liaison to go out. It's just a form. It can be filled out. The fact that Qalipu people, with 63 people in that building, doesn't have the forms printed off and help and advocate for Jordan's Principle for our membership is that's unacceptable.
Yeah,
It's
now I may
unacceptable.
say this to you, Peggy. That is an incorrect comment. We work with everybody to try to get funding and support through Jordan's Principle. My comment about Con River was when the designation was made for an office location for Jordan's Principle, it went to Con River. That's what I'm saying to you. That's not to say that we're not working with Jordan's Principle, trying to help people out through what was set up in Con River.
Jeff and Odelle.
I'd like to see us not go through Con River, do it ourselves.
Odelle.
Well, right now it is through Con River, but I mean, there's no way we can't lobby to get that done in our own area. I know that when Jordan's Principle initially, it was through NON that we went out in all of communities. I hired somebody to go out in communities and find out what needs were there in the community. And we sent a report to the Atlantic people, basically stating how desperately that is also needed here in our communities. And that was probably about maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe a bit longer, I'm not quite sure. But I know that, it's a program that's definitely needed, and I know that in my area, we have a lot of people who avail of that service.
Next question, please say your name, and you have 45 seconds to ask your question.
My name is Sarah Bing, and I'm going back to that note that was made on transparency earlier. So we all know about the supplementary agreement and what it done to all of our members. So out of the two candidates that were on the previous council, did either of you vote in favor of that supplementary agreement?
I think that's a question to Brendan and Odelle.
All right, Odelle wasn't on
there.
council at the time. The supplemental agreement was presented to us. I wasn't on any committee. In fact, the conversation or negotiation regarding the supplemental agreement was ongoing for 4 months before it was even presented to council. When it came to council the first day, it was expected to be passed that afternoon. I stopped it. It came back at us a second time, and I stopped it. I stopped it to try to protect as many people as I could. What you need to understand about the supplemental agreement, the government of Canada wasn't willing to move forward with the 75,000 plus applications that were still outstanding. In 2002, there was a regime called
Hi, good day, everyone.
Sorry.
My name is Greg James.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to check Facebook to see if people
There
were
was
asking
there
questions.
was a regime called the 2002 regime. Let me give you some background here. Take a moment. At the time, in 2002, the members of the FNI totaled 3,600. When this band was looking to be formed, there was a conversation about who was Mi'kmaq. They talked about 5,000, 7,500, settled on 10,500. Half of those people had to qualify under the criteria we had to be able to form Qalipu. That happened. In the period that followed, up until November 30th, 2012, a total of 103,000 people applied. Over 75,000 of those people came in late. The supplemental agreement got passed not to try to take people out of the band, I said it again, to allow 75,000 people a chance to get in.
Okay, Brendan, why don't you sum up and we'll see if
So
anyone
there's
else
where the
wants to ask
supplemental
in
agreement
the-
was.
Yes. Odelle wants a word here.
Yes or no? Did you vote for it or against it?
At the end of all this, yes, at the end of it all, I never supported the point system and voted against it, but I did support the supplemental agreement in the end on a show of hands to try to give 75,000 people a chance to be members of Qalipu.
Odelle Pike.
Absolutely. I think you may have known the answer to the question before.
I
you
want
asked.
to answer that question because I wasn't a part of the band when that happened, but I can tell you that I emailed every one of the counselors because I could see myself and Calvin White actually could see what the devastation was going to be if that supplementary agreement had been passed. And it was then that I wanted all of our members to protest because that's when it would have been effective. But nobody wanted to do it, not even the counselors. So your question was, did I vote for it? No, I didn't. Even though I wasn't on the band council, I still strongly disagree with it.
Those 75,000 applications, they weren't late. It's just there wasn't enough resources to go through all of those in the time period that the government had set up. So then the government took
Change
them
the
all
date.
and took them to Winnipeg.
And that's our time for that question. Next question, 45 seconds to ask your question.
Hi, my name is Greg James. I'm a retired military veteran, and this is questions beyond for military veterans and RCMP. I guess I just want to address that. Excuse me for living. I guess what we call in the military, I was collateral damage. So my question would be in that we know the federal government is still has intentions of talking about reinstating the military RCMP members. But there's been quite some rumors in that, and I haven't been able to get a clear answer from Qalipu First Nations, from anyone there, because it's so tight, you could hear a fart squeak for a mile away.
What's your question, Frank?
Are military members being reinstated as previous with status and family members as 6A?
Brendan.
And I just want to remind you that I fought terrorists, and I'm not a freaking terrorist. I got more balls than you, my friend.
Okay, I think that question, why don't we start with you, Brendan, and we'll go down to Geoff and down the line.
Thank you for the question. The idea with the military people, RCMP, and veterans coming back will be to come back as founding members of Section 6.1. Children of these people, 18 years and under at the time the band was formed, would come back in also as Section 6.1. The slowness in this process is not at Qalipu First Nation at all. In 2019, we were pushed by government to get a band council resolution in. We did it in late July, early August, I believe. So here we are now. We've gone 2 years past that, and we haven't got a veteran back yet. We put together what I thought was a draft agreement that would do the job for everybody and get our veterans and stuff back and our military people, and that's still being discussed with legal people. Was quite satisfied with the agreement because it allowed us to get our veterans back. And here we are 2 years later, not a veteran back yet. And if people want to blame Qalipu First Nation or the FNI for that, wrong place, wrong target, wrong tactic. It's not us that's delaying this process, and we should have had our veterans back by now. Thank
Okay,
you.
Geoff, and then down the line. Geoff.
Well, in the previous elections campaigns, you had indicated that you wanted to get the membership back under our control.
Yes.
I think that's certainly a huge part and parcel to that. We do need to get control of our membership and try and force the federal government to squash Bill C-25, because I thought that's what they were working on a few years ago, known as the supplemental agreement, I guess. But yeah, we absolutely need to take control of our membership and get the veterans back in as well as all of our other family members that were wrongfully removed.
Peggy.
I'm one of the people that the federal MP, Goody Hutchings, actually sat down in front of my staff and myself and said that the agreement for the veterans in our CMP was on Chief Mitchell's desk since April. But the council member also told me that the reason that they haven't executed that agreement was because they wanted to wait till the 10,500 that were called from our membership, that they could bring them all at the same time. But just having the veterans come in sets precedent. It opens the floodgates, it moves things forward. I think it's imperative that if that's document, according to Goody Hutchings, she also said this information to Greg. I'm not the only person that this was told to by Goody, and I think we need to move forward on that.
Odelle.
I don't think Goody told you the truth.
Well,
Yeah.
she's a federal
Absolutely.
she's a federal MP, so I would just
Absolutely
assume
right.
she's
If
telling
I-
the truth.
They lie.
If I may, I spoke or emailed Goody Hutchins the other day about the comment that I heard you made. She denied it.
Okay.
So you need to talk to Goody Hutchins. If her comment was to me, I need to talk to that lady.
Okay. Next question. Please say your name and 45
Greg
seconds.
10 Bears Sparks. First, a comment. I seen recently on the news, NTV, that our pamphlets, information packets regarding the voting process will be delivered in the mail as of last week. I am one person who has not received one iota of information pertaining to how to vote. So, Chief Mitchell, can you explain to me how am I going to vote without getting an information pamphlet?
If I may tell you this, Greg, I'm like you too. I haven't got an information packet either. So I'm not sure yet how I'm going to vote. So I need to figure out. You know, people were notified or be notified in two ways. An email. Some of you, how many people here received an email about voting? Yeah, some of you. How many people got something in the mail so far?
How
Anybody?
many people
I'm
don't
one
have
man in the
access to
back.
computers and the technology
Yeah, and Greg, this is why.
available?
Yeah, this is why people will get this in the mail. My wife
Well,
received an email.
the
I
vote-
haven't got an
hold
email.
it.
I'm waiting for my package. I check the mail every day.
The voting starts in 2 days.
Yes, I know.
So perhaps you can look into it,
I certainly
Chief
will.
Mitchell, and report back to me
Thank you, Greg.
personally.
Because I
Now-
need my packages like you.
Now, I don't have a telephone number in the phone book, but in case you need to get in touch with me, any one of my siblings know my phone number.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
why
I
don't we
would
start?
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Why don't we go down to Odelle this time?
What are we talking about?
We're talking about
The election.
we're talking about people not getting their notices in the mail to vote, and they're
okay.
concerned about not being able to vote in the Qalipu election.
I
What do you think about that?
Well, I talked to Keith Golding this morning, or it might have been last night. The letters were a little bit late going out. I don't know how little, but a day or two later. For the people who do have an email address on your GNU file, you are receiving your emails now. There was 10,000 already sent out. That I do know. I have mine. My whole family actually has their email address with their PIN number to vote. But as for the mail, like I said, it was a couple of days late going, so you might get it tomorrow, you might get it the next day. But if you don't get it, then there is a helpline. The helpline started today, actually. So it's working from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening. There's a number to call. If you don't have it, you can call either one of us, and I can give it to you. I don't have it right off the top of my head, but
That's only going to be good for the half of the band that has access to internet. The other half of the band that can't look it all up on
No,
their
they-
computer and You know, who is getting this information out to the seniors and people in our band that don't have access? So nobody. So when it's all coming so late, that won't be time for them to receive that information.
Geoff, last word to you on this question.
Yeah, they've got a help desk set up now. I only became aware of it last week. My knowledge was going to be sent out in the mail, and that's what we were told. And I believe probably Vice Chief Cormier said to people last week that as of today, which was last week, they would be sent out in the email if you have an email on file.
Well, I have to say, Chief Mitchell, I'm very disappointed in not receiving my package.
It should have started much longer.
This should have been done in
lot
August
longer.
or September.
Thank you, Greg.
Not 2 days
My
before.
sentiments exactly.
Okay.
You know, and I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like polling stations.
Stop here.
On to the next question, and I think this will be. We're at 8:45 now, and we want to have some brief closing statements. So this will be our last question. 45 seconds. Please say your name.
Laura White. In 2014, the Mi'kmaq language was taught through workshops in St. George's. 2015, we did it in Flat Bay. 2016, it was offered at Belmont First Nation. 2017, Grand Falls, Windsor, and 2018 at Indian Head. We've been working under the direction of Dr. Bernie Francis, a linguist, who has been teaching us our Mi'kmaq language. And recently, over, I believe, $500,000 was given for the Mi'kmaq language program here through
545.
545,000 for the Mi'kmaq language. If you are successful in leading us as Chief of Qalipu First Nation, what are your thoughts about dividing that pot so that us people who learn under Dr. Bernie Francis and Curtis Michael, we can continue with our progress with our language?
Okay, thank you. Why don't we start with Peggy and go down this way and come back to Odelle.
It's language is the beginning of everything. It's the beginning of our spirituality, our understanding of how we view the world. There needs to be significant movement on putting our education back into all of our schools. Some of our schools have 50% Mi'kmaq heritage, some have up to 90%. And it's taking a long time to get those processes going. It's more difficult for older people, but if we start with our kindergarten children now, in one generation we can revive the language. We'll be learning from our children, and we need to go after a lot more than $545,000 to make sure that the education is placed in our communities and in every single one of our schools.
Geoff.
Yes, I would certainly support that.
Brendan.
Yeah, this money that we have for a 2-year program, it was a great initiative. We started off with $100,000 to give us an introductory program. We hired a gentleman who had spent time in Escazone, immersed for 2.5 years. I'm understanding from people I hear and speak with that he's done a great job, developed a manual. We now have to identify who the next person will be to carry on in a full-time role in this language program. And yes, for those people who have been working previously with Bernie Francis and others, and I've been to one of those sessions in Port-au-Port some years ago, certainly we'll try to see what we can do to help people carry on in the program that they're used to and been working with. I don't know how we're going to spread this money out. I haven't seen actual layout of how this is all to be done, but I am pleased to be able to say that we did receive this money, fully supported in the amount that we requested. And we'll have to talk about the language program with the help of our staff to see how we're going to roll this program out. And I don't know the details of that at this point.
Odelle.
Okay, so Laura, you just stated that we've been doing this since 2014. I'm of the mind is that what we need people trained so that we can start these programs in school.
Right.
And in order for us to do that, it's going to take a lot more than just piecemealing, it in little dribs and drabs. So what we really need to be looking at, as far as I'm concerned, is have full immersion So in order for us to do that, we need people trained. So we need to get at least 5 really vibrant young people who is very quick to learn, who are teachers, so that they can learn the language and then start it in schools. It's not going to happen overnight. There's no way it's going to happen. You already said since 2014, we're in 2021.
Thanks, Odelle.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now it's time for opening statements, 2 minutes each, and once again, starting here with Brendan, and Brendan, 2 minutes for you for your closing statement.
Thank you very much, Glenn. I've heard a lot of comments tonight about enrollment, about what people perceive to be a lack of transparency. The enrollment has been a tough issue for all of us and our families, and yes, my family and your family, everybody. We have to try to get back to getting government with the table to get the enrollment finalized. 12 years has been too long to figure this out. We have a lot of court cases yet that are out there that are hanging out. We need to get finalized. As I sit and listen, I get the impression, at least from some of the candidates here, not all of them, that Qalipu First Nation is broken. Let me tell you something honestly. Qalipu First Nation is not broken. Qalipu First Nation is doing very well. As I said earlier, we provide services to our membership with federal money. $12 million a year in health benefits. We fixed and helped a lot of people. We have people in our communities in the past had to decide, am I going to buy a loaf of bread or a tin of milk, or will I get blood pressure pills or diabetes pills? We fixed that. I signed checks for 12 and 13,000 people for transportation reimbursement. We're helping our members in so many places. $38 million we spend on education every year helping our young people. I share the cards and the pictures that I get from these people, the thank you cards, the pictures of their graduation. Qalipu First Nation is not broken, and I'll tell you this. Chief Brendan Mitchell is not broken either. And I am the right person to lead this organization forward for the next 3 years, and yes, work on our 10-year strategic plan. We're not thinking about a year at a time or wondering where funding is going to come from. We're working on 10-year strategic plans, a comprehensive community plan. My final comment to you is this. I respectfully ask that on the period of election, you allow me to keep on working with the good work that we're doing at Qalipu. We're not perfect, but we've come a long way in 10 years. And I'd like to be around to bring this band forward on your behalf and on behalf of your families
Thank you,
as
Brandon.
we move into the next 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and giving us the time to speak to you and present our ideas and our vision forward for the band. We have a lot of good programs within Qalipu, there's no doubt about it. The educational programs and the healthcare that is provided comes from our fund from the government. I want to move this band forward in a positive direction. I think it's time that we do so with, as I said earlier, responsible leadership. We do need elders in our community that are going to guide us, and I think an elders committee that was promised by you over the last 2 elections, which has not been implemented, I think that's a priority for us. We need to learn from our respected elders and try and lead this band into the future. Certainly. We have a lot of concerns coming out of this election. We need to get united, whether it be in St. George's, in Corner Brook, in Benoit's Cove. We need to come together as one and start working together. Working with the local communities, not against each other. That's what this is all about. And that's what I'm presenting to you tonight. If you'd like to be on this family band that we're going on, then this is the way forward. It's going to be done respectfully. People will have their say. And whether you support me or support Brendan, whoever, it should be open for everybody to have their say in what they want to do and see how this band moves forward. I'm hoping for your confidence and support moving forward, and I look forward to the next few years, hopefully as your chief, for the people, for you. Thank you.
Peggy.
It's very important going forward. We don't have a lot of time. Our communities are on life support, and we need to rebuild them. And I believe I'm the person who understands and has a vision of where we need to be in 10 years. And we need to start looking at those issues. We need to start fixing our youth. We need to give them more supports. Qalipu has the ability and the political clout to actually go to government and push agendas. And we're not. We're not doing everything that we can to make sure that there's resources for our sick, our disabled, our children, our mental health, addictions. And we have that power within Qalipu to go to government on a regular basis and use all the resources possible to rebuild our families and our community. It's the individuals in this band that we are supposed to work on your behalf every single day, making sure all your needs on the ground are met, that our seniors have enough to eat. And with oil prices this year, they're probably not going to have enough money to even keep oil in their homes. We need to address those difficulties ahead of time. Like with education funds, with medical, we can't wait for the monies to come in after. Most of us need those monies up front or we don't get to participate. I will work my behind off for the members and the people on the ground that all of Qalipu should be protecting and advocating for every single day. And there's ways to rebuild our community, and I have that vision.
Thank you, Peggy. Odelle.
Finally, I get the last word. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to what we all have to say. I'm not going to make you any promises. All I'm going to tell you is that if I do become your chief, I will work hard, like I am presently doing in our communities, to do everything that I possibly can to make the lives of our members more accessible, more vibrant, everything good that we need in our communities. And I say that sincerely. I know that our communities right now are suffering, as I said before in my opening statements. We need to start working with our youth. Our youth are really struggling right now with our mental health issues. Our seniors, I have seniors who are in dire straits because their adult children are making them sell their furniture for drugs. So that has to be addressed. We have so many issues in our community. And all I can say to you is that I'll be on the ground working. So elect me for your chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to our Mi'kmaq Matters crew, Huey McNeil on sound, Byron Wheeler, timekeeper, Stan Osmond, camera, and to our candidates. A big hand for our candidates.
And for Mr. Glenn Mueller.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job, everybody.
Well done.
Nemultus.
We're done?
Thank God we're done.